In February 1637, a single flower bulb changed hands in Amsterdam. It sold for more money than a skilled craftsman could earn in years. Some records suggest a single bulb of a variety called Semper Augustus traded for close to the price of a house on a good canal. Not a rare gem, not a piece of land. A flower bulb, sitting quietly underground, not even in bloom. People were trading contracts for something they couldn't see, something that wouldn't even exist above ground for months. And they kept paying more for it anyway. Within weeks, that same market would collapse completely. Buyers who had happily paid a fortune one week simply vanished the next. This is the story of history's first well-documented financial bubble, and the flower that started it. Tulips aren't native to the Netherlands. They arrived from the Ottoman Empire, prized for centuries in Ottoman gardens before European botanists ever saw one. Sultans in Constantinople cultivated hundreds of named varieties. Court poets wrote about them. European travelers and diplomats brought bulbs and seeds back home as curiosities. A botanist named Carolus Clusius helped bring them to northern Europe. He planted some in the botanical garden at Leiden University in the 1590s. Clusius wanted to study them. He wasn't trying to start a business. He reportedly refused to sell his own bulbs at any price, which, according to one popular account, only made people want them more. Some accounts claim frustrated locals broke into his garden and stole bulbs outright. But word of these strange, colourful flowers spread fast regardless. Wealthy Dutch merchants wanted them for their own gardens. And one particular quirk of these flowers was about to make them far more valuable than anyone expected. Some tulips didn't grow in a single, solid colour. Instead, their petals broke into wild, flame-like streaks, mixing two colours in patterns no one could fully predict or control. Buyers found these broken tulips stunning, rare, almost otherworldly. No two broken bulbs looked quite the same. That unpredictability made each one feel unique, almost like a one-of-a-kind painting rather than a flower. What nobody in the 1600s knew was the real cause. A virus, spread by aphids, was altering how pigment developed in the petals. The same virus that made these tulips so beautiful was also slowly weakening the bulb itself, making it harder to reproduce reliably. Nobody would understand this mechanism for another 300 years. At the time, it just looked like magic. And magic, it turned out, was extremely good for prices. By the early 1600s, owning rare tulip varieties had become a serious status symbol among wealthy Dutch merchants. A garden full of unusual, brilliantly patterned tulips signalled taste, wealth, and social standing, the way a fine painting or an imported carriage might. Dutch painters even began including prized tulips in still-life paintings, alongside other luxury goods like silver and imported porcelain. Owning the right bulb meant something socially, well beyond the flower itself. Demand for the rarest bulbs climbed steadily throughout the 1620s. Prices climbed with it. For years, this looked like ordinary luxury spending among the rich. Then something changed the game entirely, and it had nothing to do with flowers themselves. Tulip bulbs only look their best and only get planted and traded in person during a narrow window each year. Bulbs are typically lifted from the ground in summer, then replanted in autumn. The rest of the time they sit underground, dormant, invisible, impossible to inspect. Dutch traders found a workaround. They began buying and selling contracts for bulbs that were still in the ground, unseen, for delivery at a future date. A buyer would agree today on a price for a bulb he wouldn't actually receive or even see for months. This trading style earned a nickname, Windhandel, literally wind trade. Buyers and sellers were exchanging paper promises about a flower neither of them could currently see or touch. Nobody was required to have the money in hand at the time of the deal, only the promise to pay later. If that sounds familiar, it should. It's the exact same instrument we covered in our last episode, a transferable claim on something standing in for the thing itself. Except this time, the underlying asset wasn't a share in a trading empire, it was a flower bulb sitting in the dirt. As paper contracts made tulip trading faster and easier, a much wider range of people got involved. Not just wealthy merchants anymore. Weavers, carpenters, innkeepers. Regular tavern backrooms turned into informal trading floors, nicknamed colleges, where people gathered to buy, sell, and speculate on bulb futures over drinks. These gatherings had their own informal rules and rituals. A buyer and seller might seal a deal with a handshake and a shared drink, the cost of which was often built into the final price. Entry into these informal markets was cheap and easy. That accessibility is exactly what let prices climb far beyond anything the flowers themselves could reasonably justify. By late 1636, prices for the rarest tulip varieties had reached genuinely absurd levels. Some contracts for a single bulb were valued at several times a skilled craftsman's annual income. One frequently cited account describes a single viceroy bulb trading for a basket of goods that included wheat, rye, oxen, pigs, sheep, wine, beer, cheese, and a silver drinking cup, altogether worth more than most people would earn in years. Buyers weren't necessarily planning to plant these bulbs and enjoy the flowers. Many were simply betting the price would keep climbing, so they could resell the contract to the next buyer at a profit. It's a pattern that shows up again and again in speculative markets. The object itself stops mattering. Only the expectation that someone else will pay more for it tomorrow. There's a colourful story from this era worth mentioning here, though it should be filed firmly under legend rather than confirmed fact. According to a popular tale, a sailor mistook a valuable tulip bulb for a common onion. He supposedly ate it with his herring for lunch. The bulb, the story goes, was worth enough money to feed an entire ship's crew for a year. The sailor was allegedly thrown in jail over the mix-up. Historians have never been able to confirm this story actually happened. It may have been invented or exaggerated later as a way to mock the whole episode as pure foolishness. True or not, it captures something real about how absurd bulb prices had become by this point. The collapse, when it came, was sudden. In early February 1637, at a routine bulb auction in the city of Haarlem, buyers simply failed to show up in the usual numbers. Prices at that single auction fell sharply. Word spread fast through the informal trading network. Within days, buyers across the entire market seemed to vanish at once. News of the auction reached other trading towns within hours, carried by messengers and gossip alike. Sellers holding contracts suddenly found no one willing to pay the prices agreed on just weeks earlier. The wind trade, it turned out, could blow in both directions. Chaos followed almost immediately. Thousands of contracts were left in dispute, with sellers demanding payment at pre-crash prices and buyers refusing to honor deals for bulbs now worth a fraction of that. Dutch courts largely declined to enforce these futures contracts as binding debts. Many judges treated tulip speculation closer to gambling than legitimate commerce, and debts arising from gambling were traditionally harder to enforce under existing law. Local governments eventually stepped in. In several towns, officials proposed letting buyers settle contracts for around 5 to 10% of the originally agreed price, effectively writing off most of the paper losses by decree. It was messy, inconsistent from town to town, and it left plenty of people out real money. But it also stopped the collapse from spiraling into a wider financial catastrophe across the Dutch economy. Here's where the story gets more complicated than the popular version usually admits. For centuries, tulip mania was held up as the ultimate cautionary tale of mass public madness, an entire nation supposedly gripped by irrational financial delirium. More recent historical research pushes back on that framing. The historian Anne Goldgar, after years combing through actual contracts, court records, and account books, found something different. The number of people seriously financially ruined by the crash appears to have been fairly small. Trading was concentrated among a narrower, wealthier circle than the popular legend suggests, mostly experienced merchants who understood exactly what kind of bet they were making. Much of the national madness narrative, she argues, was actually built up afterward by moralizing writers and satirists eager to use tulip mania as a lesson about greed and vanity. Some of the most famous illustrations of ruined, weeping speculators, still reprinted today, actually come from these later moralizing pamphlets, not from first-hand accounts of the crash itself. The underlying event was real. Whether it was quite the society-wide fever it's remembered as is genuinely still debated. Whatever its true scale, tulip mania became something bigger than the event itself. It became a template, a story people reach for every time an asset's price detaches from anything resembling its underlying value. Dot-com stocks in the late 1990s traded on similar logic, valued on future promise rather than present earnings. Housing in the mid-2000s ran on the same basic faith, that prices could only keep climbing. Certain cryptocurrencies more recently have drawn the exact same comparison, right down to journalists reaching for the word tulip as shorthand for irrational excess. Each new bubble gets compared back to Amsterdam's flowers, whether that comparison is entirely fair or not. The mechanism from our last episode, a transferable paper claim standing in for an asset traded by people who may never see the thing itself, turned out to be endlessly reusable. Sometimes it builds an empire. Sometimes it just builds a very expensive flower. Every instrument has a story. This was the fifth one.